So I recently came across this video titled Matt Walsh Ends the Abortion Argument Once and for All, and I wanted to respond to a couple of his thoughts. I mean, it's so sensationalist, I had to respond to something in there. He tries to sum up pro-abortion arguments as having just a few strategies, but my perspective isn't really covered in Matt's arguments because my view of abortion is more pragmatic. So before I explain my perspective, I want to address one small part of his video that I have a very small disagreement with.
That would be most things are either alive, dead, or inanimate. Now, is the unborn baby inanimate? No. Inanimate objects don't grow, they don't develop, they don't move on their own, they don't consume food.
So this is going to sound nitpicky because I don't actually have a problem with calling unborn babies living humans, but I still want to point out a flaw in his argument. So, depending on how young an unborn infant is, depending on how young it is, they definitely qualify as inanimate, according to Matt's logic, I think. They do not consume food by choice. They get their food pumped into them quite like a person in coma. They are not thinking, they are not moving consciously, so that's more like twitching. And they are growing, but a comatose person is still growing new cells too.
If an unborn baby does not have inherent value, then human value itself is not permanent or essential. And thus, if an unborn baby does not have inherent value, then neither does anybody in this room.
All right, so moving on to talking more about my real issues with Matt's arguments here. So I'm going to disagree with Matt's opinion from a partial Christian perspective, and then I'll transition into my cumulative view of abortion. Most Christians agree we have a sinful nature, which means we have a higher propensity for selfish, immoral actions than we do for morally admirable actions. To me, this implies that we should view life as beginning with basically a probable negative value. It's not that we are actually guilty of anything yet, but we know that even a baby's nature will most likely guide it to becoming a net negative for humanity as a whole. Humans suck. There's no getting around that, and let's not forget that when it becomes inconvenient for our beliefs. Plenty of us, maybe even most of us, are pretty disgusting creatures. We don't make the world better on average. We spend most of our life trying to take, and we're not really all that focused most of the time on giving back. We're mostly just looking out for ourselves day to day. And if you disagree with my perspective on humans, I just want you guys to think about how you, or maybe the average conservative, looks at the average liberal, and think about how the average liberal looks at the average conservative. And then think about the fact that those people that many of us are disgusted by represent roughly pretty close to half the American population. Here's the part where my take on abortion will probably surprise some of you. I don't want any innocent babies being born to women who would prefer abortion. A woman who does not want to be a mother will raise a monster. And some of you might be thinking, well, what about adoption? The horror stories that come out of the foster system are worse than most horror movies. At least, in the movies, the stories end quickly. Their death goes by pretty fast. They get torn apart and then it's over. Children have to live 18 years sometimes with a severely abusive foster parent. Unfortunately, there are not enough of you pro-life conservatives that actually love humanity enough to sacrifice and make up for all this human maliciousness. Most of you won't adopt. You'll just bitch and moan about the problem and then wonder why your children and grandchildren are going to school with monsters and why their teachers can't control their classrooms. We are not that much better than slugs. And if a woman feels absolutely nothing for her unborn child, chances are she's a slug too. And you do not want a slug raising an unloved child. You want more liberals competing with conservatives in politics? Are you not tired of the woke landscape? Preventing liberals from having abortions definitely won't help your cause. And that pretty much sums up my view on abortion. It's not a matter of whether or not they are actually living or deserving of some level of protection. It's purely pragmatic. Will stopping abortion have a cumulatively better impact on our well being as a society? It won't. It's just a matter of numbers. Humans suck, and we are going to make the world worse when we introduce more unloved children into the mess. I'm anticipating a couple counterpoints to some of the things I said in this video, so I'm going to address them in advance. If you don't think child abuse is rare in the foster system, you don't know jack squat about the foster system. I'd rather send my daughter straight to heaven than have her endure the odds of severe abuse starting from the very first years of her life. Also, if you have a problem with me advocating for ending a child's life before it has a chance to become a problem, I get it, but that is a principle thing, not a logic thing. We can see clearly that the outcome of an unloved child is more likely than not bad for everyone in that situation, including the unloved child. And this isn't a perfect comparison, but I think we've also shown that through our wars in the Middle East, that we're perfectly fine with killing pragmatically, even at the cost of innocent life. Many civilians have died in the process of bombing and assassinating terrorist leaders.